Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, Warner Brothers. Long ago, the four channels lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when Disney took over. Only Avatar: The Last Airbender, master of all four mediums, could stop them. But when the world needed the series most, it ended. 15 long years have passed, and the audience has learned of a new series, an Avatar adaptation on Netflix. And although its bending effects are great, its writers have a lot to learn before they're ready to revive a series. I am Firelord Fusco. We are here to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix edition. We are going to dig into some criteria and look at the adaptation itself. So, starting out, I want to explain kind of what we're doing. So first of all, I'm going to go through this probably 1 or 2 episodes at a time. I don't want to try to do it an episode by episode because that's going to cause a lot of back and forth, I feel like. So here's what we're going to do, okay? We are going to examine it by some criteria. Story, characters, casting, acting, effects and aesthetic, consistency, and lore. Okay, so those are 4 categories. Let me go back over those real quick, actually. Story and characters, casting and acting, effects and aesthetic, and consistency and lore. So those are going to be kind of the areas that we focus on, and we're going to kind of go over not like every change, because here's the thing, guys. It's an adaptation. It's not going to be a one-for-one remake. Okay, a one-for-one remake, it's just not going to happen, especially in live action. An adaptation, though, is something where you take the series and you adjust it in certain ways and then create a similar story. You kind of stay faithful to the source content, but still, you have a little wiggle room to kind of try and create something new. If you're here looking for me to say it's a bad show because it's not a one-to-one remake, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is that it is very different. It is very different, and there are some things that we're going to look at. We're going to kind of label them as adaptations, and we're going to decide some rulings on, is that adaptation major? Is that adaptation not major? Or is that adaptation just noteworthy? And we're going to kind of figure out, is that a good choice, a smart choice, a bad choice? What kind of choice is it for the show? Does it work? Does it not work? Does it work as a show itself or not? Can it stand on its own? Or is it being faithful to the original source material, like we said? And how that impacts the show, good or bad. So, we're starting with episode 1. And if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to follow me through this and kind of, deconstruct the show and see what it is. Because as you can see behind me, and right there we go, right there. I wish I had more Avatar gear, but I am a huge Avatar buff. My channel name is Firelord Fusco. Okay, I have loved Avatar for years. It has been a show that has helped shape me as a person. There are a lot of other people that would say the same thing. I am not the only one. I am not the only person that Avatar impacted in that way. But that just goes to show you how great of a show it is and why it's so difficult to adapt a show like that into live action. So what we're going to do right now, though, is we're going to go ahead. We're going to get ready to jump into episode 1 and see, how does this start out? Does Avatar Netflix start strong, or does it miss the mark right off the bat? And if it misses the mark, can it pick it back up? Can it fix it? We'll figure it out. Okay, so let's jump into it. Okay, episode 1, first and foremost, starts with attempting to set the tone. Brutal opening. Okay, it does something that I actually thought, I put it down as a noteworthy adaptation. The reason why is because they do something really smart. Okay, the biggest issue with the movie that people had besides, well, I mean, yeah, the acting and the casting and all that. One of the biggest issues I always hear about is the bending. Slow, clunky. There's no reason to bend a boulder if it's going to take you 5 minutes to get it to go anywhere. There's no reason to bend fire if all somebody has to do is dump some water on your fire and then, oh no, you're screwed. You know, the only certifiably decent bending in the movie would be air, because there's literally nothing anybody can do about you having a source of air to bend. But anyway, point is, Avatar Netflix starts out with a really smart move to showcase the bending effects right away. Okay? The first two bending effects we see, earth and fire. Okay, we get a solid look on those two bending styles, which are the main two that the movie had an issue with. So showcasing those two right off the bat is their way of saying, look, we're gonna do it right. I think it was a smart move. I don't feel like it was forced. I feel like it was good. But that brings us into our first major adaptation, and that is Sozin lets out the information. So in the series, if I remember correctly, I don't think Sozin wanted it known that he was going to start a war. He wanted to get to the air nomads before they could know anything, so that he could take them out with the power of the comet. He did not want it leaked that he was going to start a war. In this show, though, he does. But it gives us a solid reason for that. He wants everybody sending their aid over to the Earth Kingdom, so that they are less likely to be able to gather and get to the air nomads in time to help them. So, that is adaptation number 1. Sozin lets out the information that he's starting a war. Then we shift into the air nomads. Okay? I'm going to hold off on the first thing that you see that really set a lot of people off. I've seen the comments. I've seen other videos. I've seen issues with it. We're going to start with something else, though. Okay, so it brings us into an interesting point. We start out getting information that we didn't get in the series until Book 1, Episode 12, The Storm. We get Aang's backstory right off the bat in this. Now, there are a couple of reasons why that ruling, I'm going to rule it as a major change, and I'm going to rule it as maybe not the smartest choice. But we're going to get into that in a second. So, we start out with them preparing for the Comet Festival. So that's apparently something that everybody's doing now, not just the Fire Nation, which is interesting. I like the fact that we're getting a little more lore to that. I'm interested. You know, I would want to know, like, is that some lore that is, like, the actual original show creators' decision? Or was that Netflix decision to add some of their own flair to the world? Anyway, point is, that one's maybe not that big of a deal. I think it is kind of cool, though, but it depends, you know, where that's at. It begins with preparation for the Comet Festival. I think that's fine. I don't think that really plays a big part in how good the story is or how not. And this is where Aang learns of his Avatar nature. And again, we're not told about that in the cartoon series, in the Nickelodeon series, until episode 12. We know from episode 1 that Aang tells us, you know, Katara, why didn't you tell us you were the Avatar? Because I never wanted to be. Sulky, dramatic brooding. But no, really, it was fine in the cartoon series. Anyway, point is, that was all we got. And that brings us into our next adaptation. Okay? So in the series, you learn of Aang running away way later. From a story standpoint, the reason you learn about it later serves as a means to give Aang some flaws. But he's the main character. You don't want people to not like the main character right off the bat. So you learn later because now you have 11 episodes before that to learn about Aang and learn to love Aang and learn to build that connection with him and the rest of the characters of the main cast. So when they tell you about, hey, he ran away for selfish reasons because he just didn't want to do it, you're a lot more likely to forgive him. You're a lot more likely to forgive somebody that you care about and that you like than you are for somebody you just met. And, you know, it's not a major like, oh no, you caused the war because he ran away. The show even does a good bit to say, like, look, he ran away. He probably would have just died if he stayed. But it still gives you that flaw of Aang having that selfish thinking that led to him running away, which brings us into Aang, adaptation number 2, character change, Aang's motivation, and his abilities. He's not flying at the start, but he might as well be. Like, I get that, you know, he, like, dude's pulling a Buzz Lightyear and he's not flying, he's just falling with style. But he might as well be. Why have a glider if you can do all of that already? You know, the glider allows for a little more streamlined flying, sure. But still, not a great way to start things out when that is a keystone in the Avatar thing of like, hey, can airbenders fly? No, we sure can't. We can only use our gliders to, you know, control the air currents around the glider and fly. I think that's the direct quote. Next, Aang's motivations are completely different for leaving. He learns that he's the Avatar. He has a really clunky, weird discussion with Appa that I think at one point he full-on direct eye contact with the camera, but he's a child. We got to get further than the first 10 minutes before we decide if he's good or bad. His idea is not, I'm going to leave because I don't want to be the Avatar. It is, I'm going to take Appa for a flight so that I can get some air. Because being up high is where things make more sense to me. That solidifies it as not a mistake, but an accident. The mistake piece in the cartoon series is that he chose to run away. In the Netflix series, it was an accident because he seemingly intended to come back. So, we have a major character change from Aang, both motivations and abilities. That is definitely a major rendition. That the ruling is major change, major adaptation. Not good. It is not good in my eyes because it removes a flaw for Aang in running away from his duty and the guilt that he then struggles with for the rest of the series. So, okay, that is adaptation number 2. Adaptation number 3, the effects. Okay. During the raid on the Air Nomads, the Southern Air Temple, Sozin personally shows up with a band of firebenders. And they go on a rampage. This remained faithful to the series information because we know that Sozin attacked on the night of the comet. We never, in the Nickelodeon series and the cartoon series, we never got any confirmation that I can recall that Aang left. Well, no. Yes, sorry. We never got any confirmation that Aang left right before the comet like he does in Netflix series. In the Netflix series, the night he leaves is the comet. So the night he leaves, everybody dies. We never got the confirmation on that. It could have been the night he left. It could have been a week later in the cartoon series. We don't know. Point is, this one stays faithful because it's Night of the Comet. All of the Airbenders are in one temple. So Sozin takes down an entire civilization, commits complete genocide with a handful of firebenders. Now, my issue with the effects is that there is a serious lack of the martial arts element that we're seeing from the firebenders. We see plenty of martial arts coming from the air nomads. We see some bits of martial arts coming from the firebenders. But for the most part, the most we see from the firebenders is they're throwing Kamehameha waves. Like, we're not seeing the typical martial arts firebending that you see in the cartoon. Now, Sozin's actor is aged. Sure. He throws fire, like, he just throws his hand out and just, and, you know, and then everybody burns to death. I get that. But there are multiple other moments where you are taking people and utilizing CGI to deal with things. Why couldn't you do the same thing with Sozin's actor to remain faithful with the martial arts aspect? You know, I understand that that might be a little more difficult. So that one, I ruled it because of that purpose. Because it was... I don't know enough about CGI. I don't know enough about the process of going through all of that to know how difficult that would be. I ruled it as not major. I ruled it as just kind of noteworthy for myself personally. So my official ruling is not actually major, maybe noteworthy. Literally what I wrote. So, Airbender's gone. Aang in his ice bubble. Now, we go to adaptation number 4, the age gap in the village design. I don't know if this bothered anybody else in the series, but it did kind of confuse me. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, okay? This is another non-major, but I felt like personally it was a good change. But I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only people that noticed this. So again, it's not even noteworthy. It's just what I want to throw in there because it's my video and I can do what I want. Age gap and village design. I don't know if anybody else noticed, but in the original series, there is like a 8-year age difference between Sokka and Katara and the rest of the village. Like, when Sokka is talking to the kids in the cartoon, they are tiny. And there is not a single other youth that you see in that show from that village. And so it always left me wondering, what the heck happened? It was only a couple of years ago that all the men left. Why did the Water Tribe go on a 9-year hiatus of having kids? I don't know. I also felt like the village design was better in the Netflix show because they actually looked like igloos and that sort of thing. Obviously, it was the pilot episode in the cartoon series, which means that the village design was all very quick. But in the cartoon, it was just tents and a wall of snow. In the Netflix adaptation, it actually, I can see how that could have been a major water tribe in the past. But Fire Nation went and wiped out all the waterbenders, so now it's kind of fallen through. Good. Or not good, but I understand, that's fine. Again, non-major, but I felt it was a good change. I also felt like I saw some stuff saying that a lot of people felt like it looked like a play. I can see that from some of the dialogue. some of the dialogue was very choppy and very weird. Like, Gran, I don't know if Gran knew where she was most of the time in this adaptation, to be entirely honest with you. I don't know if she knew what was happening. But I feel like people are getting more worked up about the way everything looks because of the first episode. That is the pilot episode. That is the episode that they are going to start with. That is where they are going to get their feet under them. That they are doing a lot of things that, yeah. Point is, I mean, we don't know how they shot it. It could have been the last part shot for all we know. I don't know. My point is, the settings, the backgrounds, I think that all looked fine. As far as I've seen so far, everything in the Water Tribe looked okay. The aesthetic was pleasing. I understand that, well, nobody's dirty. Everything looks too clean. Sure. That's not a deal breaker for me. It might be for you. I understand the immersion breaks for other people in different ways all the time. I did not mark that down as noteworthy. What I did mark down as noteworthy, though, is Gran did the thing. Again. And we suddenly go into this 30-minute span of info dumping. There is... It goes into the story category. Why did Gran suddenly jump up and start going through the Avatar cycle and give us Katara's intro? Like, that was just a weird transition to me. Why not just be like, oh, kid, you're an airbender. You're the last airbender. Why not just tell him? Why did you have to start saying, like, I understand if, like, that's when you're going to tell him he's the Avatar, but you didn't. You're just like, you're the last airbender. You're not just an airbender, you're the last one. And then my biggest issue with episode number 1 was, why does everybody believe everything? Everybody takes everything at face value. All of it. She's like, you're the last airbender. And Aang is like, oh no, my people are dead. Doesn't even question, because here's the thing, guys. From Aang's point of view, he saw his people 2, 3, 4, 6 hours tops. 6 hours ago, he was with them from his perspective. Now you're telling him they're all dead. I don't know what the word is for orphan, but like being the last of a people. But that's what Aang is. And you just like, oh hey, you're this. And he's like, okay, that sucks. That all felt the weight of that reveal was taken away. And for that reason, that is a major issue ruling. Like, that is a major adaptation, and it is a problem. It ruins the flow of the show, and it makes things feel very rushed. Which brings us into number 6, the pacing. The pacing in episode 1 is clunky and sped up way too much. The characters we know and we have grown to love and we connected with during the original run of the show are not present. Episode 1 has Katara and Sokka risking their lives for somebody they've known for an hour and a half. And making major life choices based off of that. There is not any moments of building a connection. In the show, Aang wakes up on the iceberg and talks to them, and then they choose to bring him back. He then brings Appa, which, by the way, they left Appa in the ice. Immediate grounds to cancel the show, but fine. They bring Appa back, and we get like a full episode of him bonding with Katara and being funny for the kids in the village and all of that. And there's time for characterization, and there's time for that development, and there's time for that connection to build a little bit to make more sense. In the Netflix adaptation, that is not present. There is not time to build that connection. The only connection that's built is with Katara, and it is a rushed built connection at best. They go over, she talks about mom dying. They go over to the ship, which in this one isn't forbidden, which, you know, whatever, that's not noteworthy. It's not forbidden, and he kind of gives her some advice on bending about utilizing energy and that sort of thing. So the only person to have any sort of connection with him is Katara. But it all happens so quickly that it doesn't feel like a genuine connection has formed. And that is partially because of the pacing. That is also partially because of the way that they deliver their lines to each other. It just feels not convincing. So the pacing issue. Hoping that in episode 2 and on, they get that figured out, and that episode 1 was just their info dumping phase. Not noteworthy, but I took it as noteworthy. Are they purposely avoiding Zuko saying honor? If you've watched the entire series and you're watching this, does Zuko ever say anything about getting his honor back? Because in episode 1, he just keeps saying glory. Glory, 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 my glory. Like, if that becomes a thing, I'm gonna be real frustrated. I'm gonna be real angry. Because me and Zuko, we got a thing. Like, anyway. So, number 8. The bison whistle makes sense. In episode 1, Aang already has the bison whistle, and that's how Appa finds them at the village. I think that change actually makes a lot of sense. I really do enjoy the pirate episode in the series because it develops the characters even more. It gives you a feel for how the world kind of functions. And it kind of solidifies what we kind of already know. So in the 4th episode? Yeah, because, yes, Kyoshi Island is the 4th episode in the series because they show up, they fight with them. Okay, that is the first episode where we see non-benders taking on benders. But the problem is we don't actually see that happen. Because Zuko absolutely wipes the floor with them. So we see benders taking on benders, non-benders taking on non-benders. It becomes this kind of just standard thing. In the pirate episode, we finally see benders and non-benders can go toe-to-toe. If you know what you're doing, you can go toe-to-toe with a bender, even if you're a non-bender. And I feel like the pirate episode is the first time we truly see that, because we don't watch non-benders get wiped out like we do with the Kyoshi Warriors. So, the pirate episode isn't probably not going to happen, which brings my next question to, if Aang already has the bison whistle, what about the water bendings? Because throughout book 1, Aang's already using some water bending here and there because of the pirate episode, because of the waterbending scroll. I don't understand. I don't know, one, how they're going to develop Katara's ability to be able to take on. Why is my brain blanking? Master Piandao? No, wrong name. Master hold on. Katara Master Paku. Thank you. Oh gosh, Master Paku. Anyway. That hurt my brain for a second. So I don't understand. Without the waterbending scroll, they are not going to be able to develop Katara's character into being at the level of fighting Paku very easily. They can still do it, but it's not going to be very easy. It also takes away that moment of development with Katara and Sokka and Aang, and that kind of building of like, hey, how does the team fit together? With the pirate episode and the jet episode, and who knows? We might still get that. I might be jumping the gun because, like I said, this is episode 1. It's very apparent that they only cover episode 1, 2, and 3 in the first episode. So I'm gonna move on. Next thing that I have to point out, and I think it might be one of my last things to point out for this episode, is Sokka's actor. Wow. Chef's kiss. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that there's some struggles with the writing. I do not know enough. I am not in a place where I can decide anything about the casting decision or deciding anything about somebody's ethnicity. So if you're angry about me for saying, like, purely based on acting ability, he has done phenomenal. His delivery has been great. He has taken some scenes that are really struggling with their dialogue and their delivery and elevated them. The moment they meet Appa, or the moment he's looking for Appa and saying Sky Bison, and Sokka's delivery of saying it again isn't helping, was well done. And I think that for a lot of people solidified, okay, we have a Sokka. And then it continues on, and there are so many moments where I can tell if they would just give my man some time to cook, he could cook. But they don't give it to him. But what ends up happening is throughout the rest of the episode, you start feeling like Sokka has more stepped up as dad than Katara has stepped up as mom. Sokka very much feels like he's the one in charge. He's the one making all the decisions. He has become dad. Katara has not become mom at all. Sokka feels like the responsible one here. And that's a problem. Sokka is not responsible. He is arrogant. He only wants to do it to prove himself to himself that he's a man. Katara is the responsible one. Now, there are times where they kind of both go back and forth, yes. But making Sokka stand up and act as dad instead of Katara stepping up and acting as mom is an issue. I get the vibe from Sokka that he very much would be the one to be like, hey, no, it's our duty to go wash some underwear and make sure all of the clothes are put away and folded. And that is not Sokka. Sokka is... Yeah. So, okay. So that's going to do it for this episode. I have a couple of notes that I made that I think are some honorable mentions here that just kind of threw me off. Aang has Aang tells Sokka, like, you might be the bravest person I've ever met. Who all have you met? Like, you've known the man for 20 minutes. Like, what basis do you have to say that? What? Like, that doesn't work. So, okay. So yeah, so you have that whole debacle, which is like, you know what? Sure, I guess. Um, anyway, uh, so yes, there's that. Like that just feels really weird to say. Like that is a major compliment out of somebody. It's like I've never had anybody fight for me. Yeah, they weren't fighting for you. They were fighting for their village because they were literally going to kill everybody until you said, "Hey, I'm gonna leave." So it just feels really unearned for, and it just feels really out of place for Aang to say that all of a sudden. Iroh meeting Aang. That I don't think happened in the series for a long time. So having that kind of moment of like them interacting, I enjoyed. I was like, okay, an early interaction here, that's nice. I like that. Kind of solidifies Iroh as like, I'm not a bad guy. Oh, the journal. I kind of really love the idea of the journal. I don't know if I'm going to continue to love it. I don't know how it's going to impact the rest of the story. But Zuko being like an Avatar weeb, I love. Him knowing all these details from all his time traveling the world and learning about the Avatar makes so much sense. And I really enjoy them throwing that into the series and kind of making that a thing. I don't know that it's accurate to what Zuko would have done in the cartoon or in the Nickelodeon series. I'm trying to avoid calling it a cartoon. But I do like it a bit that he's done his research, that he's looked into it. I don't know that it's necessarily faithful to his character, but Aang is a monk. He is a airbending monk. He is supposed to be graceful. Why are all of his movements like he's about to constantly trip on his face? No water avatar state. Katara actually saves the day there. So that's fine. Aang, even though he's supposed to be a prodigy, he does not present as a prodigy or powerful. Like, not much at all. The Avatar State CGI was rough. And then I just wrote, all I wrote is cheesy extra cheese ending speech. So do with that what you will. Okay. So that is going to be all of it for this first episode. I'm going to try to have the next episode up either tomorrow or the next day. I'm going to try to get these all up as quickly as I can, since they went ahead and dropped every episode already. And hopefully I can kind of cut this down in certain areas and make it fit under like 30 minutes or something so that people get lost in it. Leave your comments. Leave your thoughts. Let me know. I promise to read over them because I do not have a huge following right now. And I want to know what other people are thinking. And maybe they have a perspective of something I didn't think about as why something works or why something doesn't. So anyway, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, hang out, do whatever. I will see you guys in the next one.